Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right. And this is Tom Navolis, your host. And this week we are going to be touching bases on the vitriol in politics. The vitriol in those that have different opposing positions. And more than that, we're going to additionally talk about something that I have spoken of for years, and we're watching it play out right now, right before our eyes. And in my case, I. But it's interesting to note that I have talked about a number of these aspects in the past, and I've written about them so that you would understand them very clearly in different blog posts and different other communications. And it really does begin with how much do we understand our foundational background and how much we understand what our founders had given us. That begins with the pulpits. And just for your note, you can check in the links below in the video, as well as what came out in the promo is my next article that is in the Capitol Hill Outsider that fundamentally is a tie back into a program I did a couple of weeks ago regarding Christian persecution in America, in the United States. And I say it's your fault. And the ones that I mean that it's your fault is the pastors and the church leaders of the various denominations and congregations all throughout the United States. And in there I use, in the article, I actually have statistics, I have surveys that were done by Barna, and very interesting, a 2-year study that was done in 2014 that I quote in there, but there was a new study that came out in January of 2019. So just to let everybody know that on the internet, you will not find any longer the 2014, nor even on Barna's site without doing some really deep digging. About that, I had my digging deeps dug deeper. Anyway, Barna isn't really promoting that one anymore because they have their new 2019 report on what's happening in the fact that pastors are afraid to talk about political issues because they're afraid. And a lot of them are ignorant. So, but you're not. You're not on this program because I educate you here and I bring you all sorts of information and source documents so that you can find out truth. And truth that is there from the foundational beginning, whether it's a biblical truth or whether it is that truth of our nation. So I will leave you with this in regards to that piece of work that I did, that new article at the Capitol Hill Outsider. Very simply, it is none other than, drum roll, yes, the chaplains and clergy of the revolution. Isn't that amazing? 40 plus chapters on the realities of those pastors that were establishing that moral and virtuous people that are required to have a constitutional republic. So we're going to segue right now, and we're going to talk about that vitriol, that nastiness that occurred in Congress. No, it wasn't in Congress. It was not that recent either. No, it was actually during the debates on the Constitution in New York. Yes, the state of New York. If you'll remember, I've talked to you often about the facts and reality that the New York delegation was pulled out of the convention by Yates. Yates was the head. He was the lead. He was the number one man. Unlike the Continental Congress, where people would go in and out, the convention was established in such a manner that there would be full representation by the states. And we know that some people did not make it. In fact, a state or two did not make the convention. It is a hand of God, because I think personally that if those people were there, that if they were at convention, we would not have this Constitution that we have today. There would be some additional changes to it. But one of the key players that we know of during that time was not just Madison, but a very vocal Hamilton. Hamilton, I have not seen the play. I refuse to see the play or whatever book that was associated to it. Hamilton had a level of arrogance. Although he was wonderful on the cannon for George Washington in all the various battles, I have to say that when it came to his political position, he was one that wanted what? He was the great promoter of a consolidated government. Hamilton, if he could, he would prefer that there were no states whatsoever. And that's how he supported, even in the Federalist Papers. He did songs and dances around everything, but one of the things that he argued for was a consolidated government. Now, during these debates, there were issues that came up, and some of them during the debates there in New York were talking about not just representation, but they were talking about, who was going to be in the Congress representing the people. And I'm going to give you a synopsis of what happened on Saturday, June 21st, 1788. It was a discussion on Article 1, Section 2, which is on our representation within the context of the Constitution. A Mr. Williams says that the number of representatives is too small, and elections not frequent enough for a well-digested democracy. He continues, let us insert upon the necessary alterations and amendments to the proposed Constitution in order to avoid the establishment of a tyrannical aristocracy. Now, that was Mr. Williams, okay? And remember that most of the states, they were electing their representatives to their legislature annually. And to that point, that is exactly what was happening in the Continental Congress, even under the Articles of Confederation, is that they would be elected annually. And under the Articles of Confederation, the representative that was elected would also be eligible for recall by the state if they were not performing according to that which the state felt they should be. Now, we know that finally in the arguments around the Senate, that the Senate was established as appointed by the state legislatures, and that if they were not performing according to the representation of the state, they would and could be recalled, until the 17th Amendment destroyed that and became a general election by which now the states have absolutely no true representation as intended at the founding of the Constitutional Convention. So with that, one of my favorite anti-federalists, Melancton Smith, he agrees that the adequate representation is not provided for in this Constitution, and the legislature is unlikely to rectify this. Moreover, the Constitution favors the wealthy and does not include the middling class of life. He also warns that giving government too little power is better than giving it too much power. We're going to talk about that a little bit on what is known as it's called the energetic government. And you will see that, and I put the reference of that in for you in what we have out of these books. Those that are seeing what I have, it's these books right here, which are those volumes of the Founders Constitution in print. And you're going in the promo in particular, and then on the website for the archives, you will definitely have that link to the section that I will be talking about on energetic government with some of that argument. Now, oh, here it goes. Here it goes. Is that our young Mr. Hamilton? He just gets his feathers all out of whack. And remember that Hamilton was required to leave the convention, but he went back to convention as an individual, not as a representative of the state of New York. But he sure had his play in it, especially as it went into the Federalist Papers and what were written in there to argue for the Constitution of '87. Well, Hamilton did not like what Mr. Williams said, but he liked even less what Melancton Smith had to say. And Hamilton repeats in a very long speech that I'm not going to go through, but I'll reference. He goes through that covers, it's an 8-page speech that actually takes and is a debate. His critique of the article and his defense of the scheme of representation in the Constitution, such that, I had something pop in the middle of my screen there, such that he really takes and he slams on Melancton Smith and what Melancton Smith had to say. The Smith Amendment, as Mr. Smith was proposing this amendment to that article, he takes and he slams on the Smith Amendment is thus speculative and useless, is what Hamilton has to say about it. Furthermore, states that one, pure democracy never proposed one good feature of good government, which that's true. We know that. And none of these men really were talking about pure democracy, but I think it's important to note that that did come up as a point of contention and argument during the convention, and not only that, but the ratifying conventions of the various states. So then Hamilton continues, and he continues on that. Number two, the confidence of the people will be easily gained by a good administration. This is the true touchstone. Well, we know about administrations, don't we? The interest of all parts of the community must be represented. No idea is more erroneous than this. Number four, the Federal Farmer essay warning about the aristocracies are ridiculous. It was Melancton Smith that kind of wrote the Federal Farmer as people are identifying it. 5, the true principle of a republic is that the people should choose whom they please to govern them. That's true. That's true. But the point that Smith is trying to say, we will get to, especially, I think we'll probably get to it in the third segment, because as you well know now, is that I kind of consolidate segments for Dr. Mike Spalding's program, which is on 101 FM in Lima, Ohio, WTTP, and I want to make sure that we keep the continuity of this first segment and the conversation of that going. So in the next segment, we're going to talk about that other topic that I have talked about forever, and we're seeing played out in the present vitriol in Congress. And we will discuss that what we're seeing is a well laid out plan. And that's something that the Anti-Federalists really talked about. They clearly understood it. And Sam Adams didn't even go to convention because he knew he was right. Come on, back in the next segment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this second segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right. And this is Tom Navolis, your host. And I'm so delighted you're back to join me for the second segment in all that we're going to be talking about today. And as I always do every week, is that I definitely promote all of my friends and all the different programming on Liberty Works Radio Network. And please, please check it all out and go in there and hit that donate button. And not only that, because I'm being carried also on Dr. Mike Spalding's channel there in Lima, Ohio, which is WTTP 101.1 FM. Man, it's just been a lot of fun being on there lately. And so also check out all the different programming he has, and check out Dr. Mike live every Monday night at 7 o'clock. So just interesting programming that he has on there. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that's right. All the archives for the program is at SamuelAdamsReturns.net. I know I have to promo myself, because who does it for me? Well, some of you do that. Listen, you've been doing a pretty good job at starting to let other people know. And remember that there are those couple of books there that I've written, and I sure appreciate that when you go to SamuelAdamsReturns.net that you will take and go look at those books. They're available at Amazon, or if you want a signed copy, you can contact me directly, and we can work that all out. So with that, let's get back into this segment here, which I wanted to talk about the vitriol of what is going on in Congress today. Now, they are called, what is that, the squad cat? They're calling this the squad. Well, I have to tell you, before the squad ever appeared, there was a plan. And that plan has been chipping away. And I've talked to you about this over the 5 years now that I've been on Liberty Works Radio Network. And we have had other conversations about the plan. We've also had other conversations about how many of the people in Congress are part of what is called the Progressive Caucus. I got to look that number up while we're talking, and it's very, very interesting is that the Progressive Caucus, progressive, see, I can do things in real time, C-A-U-U-S, and the Progressive Caucus is made up of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and what we have in there as of present is close to, I bet, if we look at that total number of all of those representatives in the Progressive Caucus, we will see that we are over 100 seats in there. Over 100 seats. Isn't that amazing? And let's see, the leader of that chair is none other than Pamela J. Pell. Pamela J. Pell. And also with Mark Pecan. And the membership is, guess what? I'm going to have to show you the map. I'll put the map up for you here, and you're seeing it in the video at this moment, is the map, and the majority of the members are in, yes, the coastal states. The coastal states. The one that really shocks me, though, is that we have a bunch in that Louisiana, not the Louisiana and some of that area there. But also, what's really shocking to you, and it should not be, is that a large number of those members are in none other than, yes, Those other places that are right up there in the Midwest, in Minnesota, as well as we have up there in Illinois. Now, when you're looking at that and you're trying to figure out what in the world is going on, and it's right here as I will put that up. Oh, let's see. We have exactly in the 116th Congress, there are 98 declared progressives, including 95 voting representatives and 1 non-voting delegate and 1 senator. Whoa! I am not going to take the time, and nor should I take the time at the moment to go look that up, but I think that would be real interesting if you go look that up, and maybe I'll do a separate blog post on it. As a matter of fact, I may do another article for the Capitol Hill Outsider on this specifically, is that I bet that 97, I'm betting. I'm not a betting man. I just don't do that because, I don't know, it's crazy. Why waste your money? But I would have to think out of just natural thought processes is that out of that 95 of those progressives, I bet those were, in fact, a number that voted for the articles of impeachment. I guess I'll have to do a little research for you on that one. I think that would be extremely interesting. And we'll figure out how all of this comes together. But this has been in the works for a long period of time. Because if you recall, this has been around for quite a while. I mean, this came together out of the Democratic Party, not the Democratic, but the Democrat Party. It's always said incorrectly. The Democrat Party. It came into existence, let's see, founded in 1991. Wow. Wow. Bill Clinton, where are you? Hillary Clinton? Let's start thinking that through as well. Anyway, the point on this vitriol is that it's not the first time. As I began in the first segment, it started with Hamilton wanting a consolidated government. And where we saw, and will continue in the third segment, is the response of Melancton Smith in relationship to Hamilton just being a little snothead and, just taking and spewing things, saying some things that were good relative to mincing and twisting words. Isn't that what they do right now? Mince and twist words? I think that's what we see happening all the time. But to get to where are we at, Kath? About 7 minutes? Really, I'm going to have, and if you look in the link below, you'll see the links to the other programs that I have done on the Kozak plan. Because what you're watching being executed with this, what's that group called? They're the what? No. These 4 communist jihadists, the squad. Interesting choice of words because the reference in the Kozak plan is about not a shot fired. Not a shot fired. And that's what I'm referring to, is the Kozak plan and how you start developing, and Kath mentioned that about Antifa. And when you talk about that pressure from below and that pressure from above, that means Antifa, the freaks in the streets, are taking and causing all of the different public pressure. The Planned Parenthood are putting on the public pressure. The leftist media, the communist media, is putting on that lower pressure. And they're taking and they're out there and they're spewing lies and deceptions because that is all they know. They don't know the founders' truth. They do not know what all is in, yes, the founders' Constitution. And those that do, I always say, they read the Anti-Federalist Papers. They studied the Anti-Federalist Papers. And you've heard me say before, I think that Obama studied the Anti-Federalist Papers so that he would know how to take and destroy constitutionalism from within. Pressure from above. That pressure from above, that comes from that progressive caucus. That progressive caucus. And instead of calling them I keep always forgetting what they're called already. I call them the Gang of Four. The squad, yeah, the firing squad. They're firing, bang, 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 pop, 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 pop. They're restating the vitriol, the hate, the lies, the deceptions, and the media, including the pundits at Fox and every other pundit that is supposed to be conservative-minded, are giving them too much time. And they're allowing that pressure to come in, especially when you have the pressure of the leftist media coming underneath. You know what? I thank the living God in heaven for Donald Trump and those that he is calling to surround himself with, because Donald Trump, in so many different ways, I really throw him in there with the anti-federalist, the pragmatic view on what it means to function and ensure that the republic stays within the framework and the context of the Constitution. Yes, we have all the perversions that I talk about, especially in the big book over there, From Covenant to the Present Constitution, and what has happened that makes it difficult to develop governance, good governance, according to those foundational principles. And we're going to speak a little bit about that in the next segment. But relative to the Kozak plan, you have that's the real key element. I pulled it up. I thought I was going to read a few things here. But the real aspect, the real nut of it is that you want to take and you're being hammered through these ideological insanities. And it's tactical ideology. Tactical ideology. That's one of the things that I want you to be aware of, is that to a communist conspirator like Kozak, socialist ideology offered advantages beyond mere discrete communication with fellow revolutionaries. Revolutionaries frequently promote socialism because a socialist economy, even socialism under parliamentary system of government, heavily concentrates power in the hands of the few who then run the state. Concentration of power in the hands of the few government leaders make the state easier to seize by a determined conspiracy. Wow. And you know what? That's set up by the likes of what Hamilton was promoting, especially in his Federalist Papers. It really is. Madison really had, Madison, you have to figure, he sided with Jefferson a couple of different times when he saw what was happening with the move of the Federalists, especially during John Adams, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more. When John Adams was president, the consolidation of power that was already beginning to happen during the Adams administration. John, not Sam. Sam had it out with his cousin John a little bit over what he was pulling, the shenanigans there. But the fact of the matter is that Madison even sided with Jefferson and said, no, we have to ensure that the people are the ones that ensure governance. Whereas with the Kozak plan, as well as what Hamilton wanted for that consolidation of government under the Sedition Act, oh my goodness, that was a real move to doing that. So we're thankful that Thomas Jefferson became the third president of the United States in so many different ways. But I want you to refresh that. Look at those links below to the other programs relative to the Kozak plan. Look at what's there at SamuelAdamsReturns.net, and you'll be able to get those other programs and additional references that's necessary to understand the pressure from below and the pressure from above, and how what I call the terrorist of 4 that are there, Sam Adams would have made sure they got spanked really hard. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they got it right. This is Tom Navolis, your host. And yes, you can find the archives of the program and my books. Where? SamuelAdamsReturns.net. Absolutely. You can get them there. Boy, I do like that. Absolutely, don't I, Kath? Anyway, at the break, one of the things that we did, Kath and I did, is that, yes, the gang of haters, the, what does President Trump call them? The squad, the communist jihadist. You know something? Yeah, I was right. I should have been a betting man. Boy, I should have went out and bought a lotto ticket. Well, I still can for Saturday, I guess. Maybe I'll win the lotto. I was absolutely correct. Those communist jihadists are, and this is why the Trump tweets are not. Listen to me very carefully. Very, very carefully. The Trump tweets are not racist because the squad, the communist jihadists, the gang of 4, yes, they are. They are members of the Progressive Caucus. And not only that, here's one that just blew me away in this whole thing here, is that, yes, your very best friend with a wrapped head, or I should say a warped head, no, a planned head, a Kozak planned head, none other than from Minnesota, is Ilhan Omar, is the whip of the Progressive Caucus. Wait a minute. How is it that a little snot-nosed jihadist is the whip? First time. We know why. Well, Todd, that was rhetorical, Tom. You know why. The answer is very, very simple. Planned that way. Yes. And remember, Omar is one of the most outspoken jihadists that there is. Yeah. You know what? All those guys from Black Hawk down, all those guys that were there in Somalia, you know what? I honor you more than you can even think as a brother veteran. You know? Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave that one alone for right now, and let's get back to our other sense of vitriol, which wasn't even that bad compared to what's going on here. Well, maybe, because Hamilton was really pushing for that consolidated government. The Kozak plan was trying to take us to that consolidated government with that pressure from below and pressure from above so that socialism would be introduced. And we have Donald Trump. Excuse me. We have Donald Trump who is saying America under his watch will not be a socialist country. You better jump on board with that, because if you got 97 communists in Congress, that was the Kozak plan, was to get the communists in there as socialists so that they could vote in such a way to destroy America. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. And that comes to the whole conversation of what in the world is it about an energetic government? Well, in book 1, volume 1, major themes. One of the major themes in here is, in book 1, yes, I'm holding up book 1, is the energetic government. And in here are letters from Thomas Jefferson and answers a query. There's from a Palantea Webster, remarks on the address of the 16 members of the Assembly of Pennsylvania. We have Oliver Ellsworth, who's a landholder. We have Hamilton in his Federalist 22 and all of that. We have Jefferson again to Madison. We have Hamilton barking off again in Federalist 30, 31. James Madison in Federalist 37. Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 70. Luther Martin, a letter that he writes in 1788. John Tyler in the Virginia Ratifying Convention and speaking out. And then Thomas Jefferson in his first inaugural address. But wait a minute. What was that with the vitriol? What was that all about? Well, I already mentioned to you that, our friend Hamilton, he starts barking off at what Melancton Smith was talking about relative to will Congress, will the House in particular, be represented by the middle class, the middling class, the middle class? Will we have that representation? Or will it turn into an aristocracy because the potentials of who would run or who would have the opportunity to run because of all of the different types of support, all of the different types of actions? I'm going to take if we get to these references and we get to this whole thing, but this became a big argument around the energetic government and what that means for a centralized government versus a government that would always retain the power of the people. And it was also part of that argument in the points that Hamilton was making in his response to Melancton Smith relative to the what Smith had said. And so, yes, we want a federal government, and we want the Republican model within that federal government so that the people would choose their representatives. But all Melancton Smith was trying to say, you're going to end up with an aristocracy potentially. What is it that we have? It takes, middle-class person. Could you or I, as a middle-class person, really run for Congress? No. It takes, what, $1.5 million to $2 million, depending on your district, to run for Congress. In some districts, they're spending up to $5 to $10 million. It's a lot of money to raise. That's a lot of money to put together. And those communist gang of four, they were funded by Soros. They were funded by the progressives. They were put there. So, you know what? They're a different form of aristocracy within the context of the progressive movement. Look at Jerry Nadler, that little communist puke. Anyway. So Smith, he takes and he gets up here on, it was the 23rd of June, 1788. Now, he did not want to rise and talk again. And he takes a couple sentences in here saying, you know what, I was not going to speak again at this convention. But, you know what? The gentleman, who we won't mention again because we've mentioned him enough, the gentleman wishes me to describe what I meant by representing the feelings of the people. If I recollect right, I said that the representatives ought to understand and govern his conduct by the true interest of the people, not the emotions, the feelings, the feelings of the people, but to do it by what is the interest of the people. I believe I stated this idea precisely. When he attempts to explain my ideas, he explains them away to nothing, and instead of answering, he distorts and then sports with them. Oh, there is that vitriol. Distortion and sporting. We see that in Congress. We see that in the speeches. We see that all over the techno-oligarch social media insanities. Oh, by the way, if you aren't on eaglefirenation.com, you are in the wrong place for your independent thought and security of your information and those independent thoughts. Anyway, so go to Twitter, Dumditter, and Fully Book and everybody else, and you will continue to get put into your echo chamber and blocked and whatever else. And remember, none of your data is secure. It now all belongs to them. So there you go. And so that is eaglefirenation.com. But with that, we continue here with the vitriol. And he goes on to talk about that you can be rest assured that in the present spirit of the convention, to irritate is not the way to conciliate. So that's what we have going on. And there's so much more that he talks about. But he establishes the fact that the gentleman, by the false gloss he has given to my argument, makes me an enemy to the rich. Wow, this is not true. All I said was that mankind were influenced in a great degree by the interests and prejudice that men in different ranks of life were exposed to different temptations, and that ambition supposes the poor to have less sympathy with the sufferings of their fellow creatures, for that those who feel more distress themselves have the least regard to the misfortunes of others. Whether this be reasoning or declamation, let all who hear let them all hear, as I have observed that the rich were more exposed to those temptations which rank and power hold out, to the view that they were more luxurious and intemperate, because they had more fully the means of enjoyment, that they were more ambitious, because more in the hope of success. The gentleman says, my principle is not true, for the poor man will be as ambitious as the constable, and a rich man to be a governor, and so on and so forth. But the whole idea is that Hamilton was objecting to the use by both Mr. Williams and Melancton Smith that there would be this aristocracy. And he actually called Melancton Smith an aristocrat, which he never was. And then then Smith goes into this conversation about, the real American aristocrat. If you wanted to know an American aristocrat, you can lay by the definitions given by Hamilton and the definition that was qualified by Melancton Smith would be none other than John Adams. Now, John Adams and Hamilton become great allies during what? During Adams' presidency. And what happens in there as well is that John Adams is moving through this whole process of taking and really putting on the pressure from the top to consolidate the government's power in and under that constitutional regime. Now, we don't have time to really get into the rest of it, but it is amazing. I mean, the intelligent answering, and the link is there. If you go down below, there's a lot of links. As always, I have lots of references. The reference to Melancton Smith's response to none other than young Mr. Hamilton. At this time, he was all that young, but he was young enough. But he was a snot-nose. He was absolutely one of those that probably would have been more of a democrat, because they wanted power, they wanted to subvert the states, they wanted to take and have government control over everything. Whereas the Anti-Federalists, you got it, and they got it right, wanted states' rights, wanted to ensure that each and every one of us as individuals were the sovereigns of the nation, and yes, we would elect representatives that would best be able to deal with our interest, not the emotions. And you know something? Sam Adams understood that clearly. He got it right. And also, those anti-federalists, as I've said, come on back next week.